Welcome back to Bible Stories 101. Today we're talking about the call of Moses, so let's do some Bible stuff.
The book of Exodus fast-forwards a whole 40 years since Moses' birth and adoption, when one day, while he was out among the people, he witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. After making sure the coast was clear, Moses attacked the Egyptian and murdered him, burying him in the sand. The next day, Moses went out among the people again. He attempts to break up a fight between two other Hebrews. Moses' worst fear was realized when one of the Hebrew men sarcastically asked who made him king, and if Moses was going to kill him like he killed the Egyptian the day before. Moses' brief occupation as a caped crusader fails and panic sets in. Even worse, word had reached the Pharaoh of Moses' deed. Moses promptly flees to the land of Midian, where he will reside as a shepherd in exile for the next 40 years.
During those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue came up to God.
The Exodus account makes yet another 40-year time jump. Egypt is 40 years in the rearview mirror, and up to this point, a distant memory. While on a day like any other, Moses is out tending his flock. But Moses notices a burning bush that wasn't being consumed by the fire. Curious, Moses investigates the burning bush. The weirdness level reaches 11 when the bush begins speaking to him.
"Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." Then he said, "Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground."
After identifying himself as the God of his fathers from the burning bush, God commands Moses to bring his people out of Egypt. After 40 years of being a shepherd of sheep, Moses is to become a shepherd of God's people. The hesitant Moses asks God for his ID. So God transforms Moses' staff into a serpent. And when God commanded Moses to pick up the serpent, it reverted back into his staff. Still skeptical of the burning bush, Moses gets his hand turned leprous. When he placed it back in his cloak, it became healed. Moses, finally confident of God's credentials, is now unconvinced he's the right man for the job. He pleads with God that he's not eloquent enough to be a leader. God, losing his patience, compromises with Moses, and God will allow his brother Aaron to accompany him on the mission. In spite of being called on by God himself to take on the task of freeing 2 million Hebrews from slavery, Moses still sees to it that his earthly obligations are satisfied. Moses receives the blessing of Jethro, his boss and father-in-law. Their responsibilities squared away, Moses and Aaron head down to Egypt for their confrontation with the ruler of the world.
Hey gang, I hope you enjoyed that summary of the call of Moses. So I wanted to change some things up a bit from last time. Instead of rambling about one thing, I figured, hey, why not ramble about 5 things? So we're going to somewhat briefly go over 5 things that we should know from this story. Okay, so thing number 1, Moses rejected royalty. Moses is 40 years old when he decides to reject his royal upbringing and status. We get some insight from Stephen, who's the first martyr of the church, by the way, when he addresses the Sanhedrin in the book of Acts. So let's flip over to Acts chapter 7. All right. I'm sure you're flipping over with me. So Acts chapter 7, verse 22, we're going to start. "And Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was mighty in his words and deeds. When he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brothers, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them being wronged, he defended the oppressed man and avenged him by striking down the Egyptian. He supposed that his brothers would understand that God was giving them salvation by his hand, but they did not understand. It's also pointed out here by Stephen that Moses is setting up a type of leader who is chosen by God that Israel will reject. As we continue through these stories, we'll be revisiting this pattern of God's prophets being rejected by the people. Moses is the first, but he certainly won't be the last. That's something for next time. The second one, the burning bush, is symbolic. So the burning bush has some very interesting symbolism. Fire is always symbolic of judgment in Scripture. We've seen in Sodom and Gomorrah when it was judged by fire back in Genesis 16. And we'll see plenty more episodes where this is the case. Hebrews 12:29 says that our God is a consuming fire. So with all this fire talk and fire symbolizing judgment, what's being judged here? So the Hebrew word here for bush is seneh, which actually comes from the word to prick. And thus we know, as it's generally been accepted because it's a common plant in the region, that this is an acacia bush or a thorn bush. Thorns in the Bible are a symbol for sin. It's a pretty consistent allegory. So in Genesis 3:18, if we go back there, we read that thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. This is when God cursed the ground. It was because of the original sin. So we also see at Christ's crucifixion, the Roman soldiers made a crown of thorns and placed it on Christ's head. And Christ was made sin for us. Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians 5:21, for our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. He literally bore the sins on his brow. So here with the burning bush, we have sin being judged by God's consuming fire. The thorn bush is not consumed, and the sin is in the hands of the living God, not being destroyed. This is a model of mercy. So we have some wild stuff all the way back here in Exodus. Okay, another thing we should know, God's unpronounceable name. So have you ever wondered what God's name is? Like, is it Steve or Carl? Well, Moses actually asks God for his name here, like his name. So Exodus 3:13, then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God says to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel. I am has sent me to you. God replies with I am that I am in most of your texts. Here's where we're introduced to the tetragrammaton. I only got that in one take. But what God says his name is here is actually kind of a mystery. The Hebrews were so reverent of God's name that they refused to pronounce it, and it's basically been expunged from our manuscripts. We know the consonants Yod-He, Vav-He, but ancient Hebrew didn't have actual vowels, so we just have to make an educated guess at the pronunciation. Scholars have settled on Yahweh. The name appears 6,800 times in the Hebrew Bible, or what we call the Old Testament. So when you're going and you're reading your Bible and you come across Lord, sometimes you'll see it in all caps. Well, that's where Yod-He, Vav-He was, or the unpronounceable name of God. So also, when you hear the name Jehovah or Jah, I'm sure some of you guys have heard those before. Those are actual Latinizations of the name Yahweh. So when the Bible was translated from Hebrew to Latin, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, that's how they pronounced it. All right, next thing you should know, Moses had a speech impediment. So when he was confronted by God, Moses claimed to be heavy of mouth and tongue. That's in Exodus 4:10, which apparently was a bodily ailment or condition, like an actual physical ailment. The Hebrew term for heavy, kaved, often refers to an ailment. It's used in Genesis 48:10, where Jacob's eyes were heavy with age. The dude was blind. Ezekiel 3:5-6 speaks of nations that are deep of lip and heavy of tongue, meaning unintelligible language. It's not surprising that foreign languages were considered somewhat like speech impediments. A cognate term, that's a fancy word for similar or related. The Akkadian word kabatu is likewise used in medical texts to indicate physical ailments. And although not used in medical terminology, the Sumerians have a metaphorical term for heavy. It's used of non-fluency of language. So Moses either had a speech impediment or he'd simply forgotten Egyptian. We're not positive, but in any case, that's why God allows Aaron to go with Moses to be a spokesperson and do his thing down there. Alright, and last and certainly not least, God identifies himself as the God of the patriarchs. So, why is this important? This is important because narratively it provides a link between all the stories that we've read about in Genesis, and it refutes some goofy claims about a god named Yahweh in that region that was some 2-bit regional deity. Pro tip, don't get your theology from Wikipedia. I saw that Elon Musk is rolling out some Grokpedia thing because Wikipedia is just absolute trash. So, when you want to do some biblical research, get it from some trusted sources. So I have this whole library here. No, this burning bush character is God himself. He's the God. So we're going to dovetail off the passage we read earlier where God tells Moses his name. We read in Exodus 3:15 through 16. God also said to Moses, "The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt." So if you want an hour-long video about this, I'm sure there's one on YouTube out there for you. But God is pretty specific here about who he is and shows Moses the back of his baseball card, essentially. With his credentials established, Moses is ready to roll up his sleeves and get to work and give Israel the good news. So these videos are meant to serve as an introduction to these stories, a little bit of review. Today we reviewed the Call of Moses, which begins in Exodus chapter 2, verse 11, and runs all the way through to Exodus chapter 5. So believe it or not, we have left out a lot of stuff, but if you want to learn more, go read it yourself. I suggest you get a good study Bible, like my ESV here. And until then, I will see you guys next time. God bless.